Hi, I'm Tim Vitale, and I'm here to talk to you about time management. This is the third AP scenario. In this video, we're going to talk about that third AP scenario. We're going to talk about organizing, prioritizing, action planning, and don't forget to be a kid. We'll talk about that more later. So here's the scenario. I'm new to high school and in all AP or honors classes this year. I'm working hard to prove myself in freshman cheerleading / freshman football. There's a big game against Kingsway this weekend. I have 2 tests on Tuesday after we get back and an English project due the same week. I just don't know how I'm going to get all of this done. I also am wondering who I'm going to the homecoming dance with. So pause this video, take a couple minutes to think about what you would do in this scenario, who you can talk to, what your resources are. So go ahead and pause it. All right, let's talk about it. So organizing. The first thing you want to do is you need to organize your thoughts. I'm guilty of this where I have so many things going on and it feels like so much, but that's because it's all stored in my head. And sometimes I just need to just write it all down and look at it visually. That's just who I am. But it really helps to just see like tangibly what things are in my way. What obstacles do I have to overcome? What problems do I need to solve? So write everything down in a notebook. You can use a computer or phone if you need to just get it all out. What do you need to do? What needs to get done? Like I said, you can keep it digitally. A lot of kids using phones, that's fine. Put it in a calendar, put it in a notepad or whatever. Once you know what's going on, don't forget to set reminders. We're going to talk about prioritizing in a second, but once you do prioritize and you figure out what you're doing, set reminders, set alarms, set alerts. You guys have your phones. They're really powerful tools. Don't forget that you can just like set an alarm and say, don't forget to do this, or plan out a block of time for you to sit down and study, or, set an alarm that says, don't forget to ask someone to homecoming, or, use your phone to help you and to set those reminders. It'll help a lot when it comes to keeping your thoughts organized and reminding you of things so you're not like, oh my God, I just forgot that. Don't forget to block out time for yourself to organize, because if you're constantly just running around doing things, you never sit down and kind of just reset and be like, okay, what do I need to do? Sometimes you just need to sit, be by yourself, not having your friends in your ear or your mom in your ear or your siblings in your ear. Just close your door, go in your room and just say, what do I need to get done? Also, make sure that you're realistic with your time as well. When you're organizing your thoughts, when you're organizing what it is you have to do, and you are planning things out, making time for things, be realistic with yourself. And I mean that in both ways. I know some students that think that they can get things done very, very, very quickly. And usually that's not the case. So make sure you plan out enough time for yourself. But I also know students who will say something like, I'm going to study for 6 hours tonight. That's not really realistic either. So just make some realistic things. We're actually going to talk about that a little bit too later as well. But let's talk about prioritizing. So out of everything that's going on in your life right now, and this is not just school related things, but everything that's in your brain that you're like, I need to do this, I have to get through these things. What is the most important? And look, I'm a teacher, but I recognize that, physics or, world history, these are not necessarily the most important things to you at any given moment. So, if there's a situation going on at home, like your sister just broke up with her boyfriend and she's really upset and you need to be there for her, that might be really important to you at that time. So that is something that you want to prioritize. And that's okay. But you just need to understand what things are requiring your attention, your mental energy, and you need to put those things in order of what is most important to you. And like I said, this might include family, it might include friends. Maybe your friends are expecting you to be somewhere and that's important to you, or, like I said, you have some family issues, or maybe your parents are depending on you to watch your little brother And that's important. You can't say, oh, I need to go study for a test. No, you have to watch your little brother. So there's things that you have to prioritize based on your actual needs and what's important to you. And this one's really important, but you need to take into account the consequences and the benefits of those prioritizations that you do. So for example, using that little brother example, you might be, if you're focusing on yourself, right? You're really nervous for this test, but you're supposed to be watching your little brother. You can't say, oh, I'm not going to watch my little brother so I can go study for this test. You have to prioritize based on, consequences. So ask yourself, if I don't watch my little brother, what could happen? If it's bad, you want to make sure you prioritize based on those consequences. Again, going to the football game and studying for a test. I'm not saying that there's one right answer here. On one hand, maybe if you don't study for your test, the consequence is you might do poorly on the test. If you don't go to the football game, the consequence is you might miss out on a really fun night where your friends all bond together, or you might miss out on like a really great game, and that's something to take into account. Like I said, I'm not saying that there's one better thing or the other, but these are the consequences, and you have to decide for yourself what those consequences are. But don't forget that when you prioritize, you are choosing which consequences you are most okay with. So if you do go to the football game, you're saying that I am more okay with doing poorly on this test than I am with missing out on this game. And that's okay as long as you accept those things. Just, understand that you can't always have everything, especially if your list is super long. You can't say, well, no, I'm going to go to the football game and I'm going to get an A on this test and I'm going to watch my little brother and I'm going to find a date to the homecoming dance, and I'm going to do this. It's too much sometimes. You have to make cuts, and you have to ask yourself what is going to be sacrificed. And sometimes it's the football game, sometimes it's a class. It depends on what your priorities are. Whoops. After you prioritize and organize your thoughts, you want to make a plan, and this depends on what it is that you need to do. So let's talk about studying. That's a super easy example. If you're studying or any of these things, you want to make a SMART goal. A SMART goal it's an acronym, so it's specific for S, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So going back to my previous example where I was talking about how I've had students that say, I'm going to study for 6 hours straight. Unfortunately, I've heard students say that they've studied for that long. Usually they're telling me, I don't understand why I didn't do so well on this test. I studied for 6 hours straight last night. And the thing about that is that it's not that wasn't a very good thing to do. It's kind of like a waste of time in a way. You know what I mean? Like you skip the football game so you can just spend hours in front of the textbook or in front of your notes, but that's not really beneficial to you. So a SMART goal is specific. So what is it that you want to do exactly? You can't just say, I want to study for the test. That's not specific enough. I want to read through my notes from the textbook and highlight everything that I don't understand. That's a specific goal. Or saying something like, I want to practice 30 problems before I take the tests. That's something. Or I want to reread the textbook and write down all the questions that I have. That's a specific goal. But just saying I want to study for the test is not specific. And I find, and the reason why I'm going over this is that I find that students, when they make it vague, they feel like they're never done, right? Like if you say I want to study for the test and you sit down and you spend 2 hours studying, you feel like you could be doing more and you feel like you need to keep studying. And that's kind of, it's hard because, you're kind of driving yourself crazy just studying for so long. So that's something to think about. So specific, choose something specifically. Then measurable. Measurable means you need to be able to evaluate if you did the goal or not. So like I said, if you say I want to study for the test, you could open the book, read 2 lines, and that could be studying, or you could study forever. So that's not really measurable. But like I said, if you say, I want to practice 30 problems before the test, that's measurable. 30 problems. Did I do 30 problems? Yes or no? That's measurable. If you say that you want to go through at least 10 worksheets, or if you want to read the summaries of all of chapter 5, that is a measurable goal because there's a finite limit of how many summaries there are. So that's just something else. Achievable. This is also something that I find AP students do a lot to themselves, is they set these goals that just aren't realistic. And I'm guilty of this too, but like, if you're like, I'm going to read through, the entire chapter, and I'm going to write down everything, and I'm going to memorize everything, and on top of that, I'm going to practice every single problem that we were given from this chapter. I'm just going to redo it all in my notebook. Like, that's just too much. It's not achievable. You couldn't do it if you sat down and did it, let alone in the little time that you have. So that's not achievable. Make it achievable. Relevant. Make sure that so this graphic kind of relates to jobs, but you guys understand this for school. But relevant would just be like if you're like, I'm going to watch all the videos I can about physics. Well, that's not really relevant to the test at the time. You want to make sure it's relevant to what it is that you're trying to get done. And then finally, time bound. Give yourself a time. Say, I'm going to sit down and do this for an hour, or I'm going to check in a half an hour and see how far I am. Like, you need to set time, because if you don't, you're just going to be doing it forever, or you're not going to be doing it for long enough. Setting that time and giving yourself that discipline of saying, I'm going to sit down for 1 hour, then you just sit down in 1 hour and that's it. And then you've done it. The other thing I wanted to talk about was, that's a studying example, but let's just say you wanted to ask someone out to homecoming. You could use a SMART goal for this. I know it seems kind of lame, but you could. Specific would be, I want to ask out and get a yes from somebody for homecoming. Measurable is you need to get a yes. Achievable, hopefully it's within your scope. Hopefully you could get somebody to say yes. And then relevant, it makes sense to your high school career. And time bound, you obviously need to have it done before homecoming, but you can make it done sooner than that. So I know this seems silly, but it's just you need to set goals for yourself that are SMART so that you can actually achieve them. Because if they're not SMART, they might be things that you can never really fully achieve. And the last point I want to make is, I think, one of the most important ones. Don't forget to be a kid. I know that there's a lot of students that I've had in the past that will try really hard to just be the best student possible, and I appreciate that as a teacher, but you have to remember that in order to actually do well, sometimes you need to give yourself breaks, and it would be kind of a waste if you spent all of your time, 100% of your time, just studying with your nose in a book, and you're missing out on some of the great things about being a high school kid. So go to the dance, go to the football game, make time to play a video game or hang out with friends, because you really need to make sure that you're a kid. And I know that seems like, well, what if I have to study? Should I just go to the game instead of studying? Sometimes relaxing is better than studying, especially for people that are super anxious about tests and things like that. Now, I'm not saying that you don't need to study, or that you can just always do something fun instead of studying. I'm just saying that if you're the kind of person that gets worked up and you're saying, I'm going to study for 6 hours, sometimes it's more beneficial for you to just study for an hour and then go to the football game. And you might do better just because you're relaxed, you had fun, you're in a good mood, and you studied still. So it's just, make sure that you don't miss out on some of these high school things, because some of them you only get one chance for. We're going to talk more about this in a later scenario, though, because it is such a big idea. But just a little sneak preview. All right, I hope that helped.